Digital Marketing Misfits.
What about who's that guy? Nicholas something or other. He talks now, but in the beginning, he hopped on TikTok during like height of the pandemic, and he just had the cards. I remember that guy.
No,
he's Italian, and he would give like history facts, and he would do stuff, but he would just play like piano music, and he would create cards, like almost like those big giant cue cards that you would see old school,
like Bob Dylan.
Yeah, and he would just not say a word, and it would just tell a story.
I don't
know. Maybe I
got it.
Oh, now it's gonna eat at me. Who his name? But yeah, look up just like TikTok cards and history, and you'll probably find the guy. But he talks now. The reason why he did it was because he was just too afraid to talk on camera. He was very insecure, so he just wrote everything out.
That's part of the process, is finding your voice, right? Jason talks on about this really well. Like, yes, eventually you need to rip off the Band-Aid, but ultimately you've got to find your voice. And if that starts with text on screen, it starts with text on screen. But putting yourself out there is what's going to take you further than not. Don't just sit back and be the consumer of content. Create the content.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to briefly touch on something. I recently had a conversation with my wife the other day. So my wife graduated from nursing school last September, but last summer she was following. My wife doesn't do any social media whatsoever. She only has two social media accounts. They are completely anonymous. She just does it to scroll. And she has TikTok and Instagram, and she ended up ordering, because she was studying for her national or her state nursing certificate or whatever you want to call it, and she had to pass like this final test called the NCLEX, right? And she followed, because she was in nursing school for a couple of years, all of the people. She was in like nursing TikTok, right? So like all of her content she ever consumed, the algorithm nailed her, right? It was like only served her like educational nursing stuff, comedy nursing stuff, very relatable. And she followed a specific creator because she was the one that was doing the education all the time. Well, she ended up buying a study guide, a digital planner or a study guide from this particular influencer. We talk about when people buy things from influencers. My wife is a perfect example of when somebody builds a relationship or a trust with an influencer just by viewing their content day after day after day. Well, if they get enough value, eventually, if that creator places an offer in front of them, most likely they're going to purchase something. And my wife is a great example of that, because she bought her study guides and these like big boards and all this other stuff that helped her prepare her for that final test to pass. And I asked her, I said, where did you get all this stuff from? And she's like, oh, well, I follow this girl on TikTok. She's hilarious, but she's got tons of educational stuff. And I thought it would help me pass the test. And I was like, I said, that is amazing. So I went and started watching her content. Okay. And I started to realize, I'm like, this girl is a better marketer of her digital products than she is probably a nursing student or a nurse. Well, she had been a nurse for a number of years, right? So she'd be a nurse for 4 or 5 or 6 years, but she's probably making more money from her digital products than she is in her nursing job. Yeah. And I said, this is exactly what we talk about when we talk about like influencers and how influencers can monetize their audiences and stuff like that. This girl did it to a T and crushes it.
No idea.
And crushes it. And I'm like, I love seeing what people are doing with digital products and taking what they're already knowledgeable on and putting into an offer and creating content, building an audience, and then just serving that offer in front of them. And she probably makes, thousands of dollars per day because her link's in her bio and her message is consistent, and she delivers education to her audience every single day. And there's always people in nursing school, right? So that content never ever gets old.
Right.
So yeah, it's just wild to me.
And I would argue, like you said, as long as you keep delivering value, people will eventually buy. I'm going to argue that it doesn't even have to be value. They just have to keep seeing you over and over and over and over again. And eventually it's just going to wear you down mentally. Like, I have to freaking click and see what's on the other side of that link. I've seen this person 30 times already.
Or 100 or 500.
500. Right. Yeah. It's just, there's people who just spam post, not even spam post, but they post all the time.
She'd been following her for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to buy.
And it's funny, Jamar, that's like any that's not even, you don't say niche, but anybody can do that in literally anything that they work in, anything, you know,
as long as the messaging is consistent. Right. You're not all over the place or whatever. You have a very defined audience that you're serving content to on a daily basis. It's extremely powerful.
It's awesome.